Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to after spring break. It's March 20th, 2023, and this is a regular meeting of the Moscow City Council. Drew.
If you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody.
No, that's not it. This is what I need.
Okay, moving on. Next up on the regular agenda, we have the mayor's appointments, and I have three of those this evening. First is Bergen Clute Painter for the Human Rights Commission, college rep, expiring 12/31 of 2023. Next is Lily Hume, Human Rights Commission, high school representative, non-voting, expiring 12/31, 2023. And lastly, for the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency, Tom Lamar, the county commissioner seat, expiring 12/31 of 2024.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
move that we approve all the commissions recited.
Second.
Duh.
Everybody's out of practice.
We are.
Very much.
Okay, Sandra,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Okay, the slate candidates pass. Are any of the candidates floating around out there? And if they are, would they like to say a few words to us? Okay, hearing none, we move on to staff recognition.
Mr. Mayor,
Madam,
did I miss approving the consent agenda?
you must have.
I think you did too. Savage.
Well, there's only like K
1,000
letters
things.
worth of stuff. Thank you for catching that
Sure.
before it was too late. Okay. Is there a motion on the consent?
And with
agenda?
that, I move to approve the consent
Okay.
agenda.
And Maureen seconds. Okay, thank you. Drew,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Haley,
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Okay, and given all of that, there's no telling where this meeting's going to go. Anyway, staff recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought you handled that very smoothly, by the way. It's my pleasure tonight to actually to recognize my favorite City of Moscow building official, actually our only building official. But in all seriousness, Justin Goodwin, not only for his 20 years of serving this great community, or his role in responding to things like the unfortunate fire we had the other night, or the countless hours he's volunteered for similar unfortunate events, or his recent tenure as president of the Idaho Building Officials Association, but rather it's his most recent accomplishment or dedication to the community. He applied for and was appointed by Governor Little to serve on the Idaho Building Code Board, along with other industry experts, architects, engineers, folks from different trades. He'll serve as the lone city building official on that board and make very important decisions and recommendations for years to come for communities across the state. So truly a wonderful ambassador for our community. I don't think he wanted to join us tonight. It's my understanding he's watching from the comfort of his own home, perhaps even putting away some of the gear that he used in responding to that event just a couple nights ago. So I just ask you in joining me to recognize him. Thank you.
That's great.
And well-deserved it is, too. He's quite knowledgeable about all things building code. He's served on Moscow's Building Code Advisory Committee for, I don't know, decades,
Forever.
but very involved with the community, and he does a great job.
Let's give him a round of applause. He's
Yeah.
not here.
Good stuff. Good for you, Justin. Okay, next up is public comment and the mayor's response period. This is for the next 15 minutes in 3-minute increments. So if anybody has something on their mind, pop up, name, address. 3 minutes is short, so just give us the salient points and tell us what you got on your mind. So any takers, hop right up. Kenton, hello.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Kenton Bird, 517 East B Street in Moscow. I'm here this evening with 6 students from my Reporting 2 class at the School of Journalism and Mass Media, the University of Idaho. This is either the 11th or 12th year that I have brought my students to a council meeting, and this is the class where they learn about coverage of government, public issues, public education, the courts, and so we had hoped to come to the council meeting on March 6th, 2 weeks ago, but we're glad that meeting was postponed until today because there are actually some action items on the agenda tonight that will make it a little more interesting. My students are working later this semester on a semester end project to address a community issue, concern, problem. And so if you council members or if anyone in the audience have suggestions for topics that we might address, 4 years ago, we did Poverty on the Palouse, and we examined questions of homelessness and hunger, security. And so we're welcome to your suggestions. And I'm kbird at uidaho.edu if you'd like to contact me. And you might just be prepared. The students might need to contact you after the meeting or send an email to follow up. So thank you for being here and for any courtesies that you extend to my students.
Thank you, Kenton. And thank you all for showing up, even perhaps under a bit of a duress, but thanks for showing up anyway. Appreciate it. Who else?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Dave Glazebrook, Ridge Road, right here in Moscow. All right. That didn't work.
Lori?
There we go. Thank you. Perfect. Perfect. All right. So tonight I'm addressing constitutional issues. So stick with me. I don't have background music. The mayor asked for background music. I didn't know that was a request tonight. So we open our meetings with Pledge of Allegiance. That has meaning. And right now it's being ignored by the mayor and the council. Each of you, mayor and council members, took an oath of office, and you're ignoring that oath of office also. Now that sounds harsh, but it's really not. So tonight, the Idaho Constitution states very clearly, all power is inherent in the people, and they have the right to peaceably assemble and to instruct their representatives. That's what I'm doing tonight. This is instruction. So we're going to run through the situation here very quickly. In March of 2020, we had an ordinance. This is when the SARS-CoV-2 arrived. We had an ordinance for emergency powers, and there were specific procedures to restrict any constitutional activity. In July of that year, the council, some of you are still here, adopted Health Order 20-03. That was face covering, social distancing. Now that was adopted as a resolution, not as an ordinance with no specific constitutional restrictions. And for those who don't know, there is a distinct difference between a resolution and an ordinance. A resolution is only a non-binding thought. So on September 21st, the question was to extend that mandate or not. And there were hundreds of people outside City Hall. Hundreds. The restrictions placed on the residents did not allow them to come inside to speak to the council and to the mayor. Now, you had the opportunity that when things are strange, then you do strange things. So open the window and hear the council and hear what people were saying outside. We could have done that, but we didn't. Now, what happened on September 22nd? On September 22nd, an email from John Smith. John Smith said, and it was quite a lengthy email, and this was concerning the psalm singing going to be held on the afternoon of September 23rd, 2020. So John Smith said, I hope that something can be done enforced to prevent, or at the very least, discourage them from holding another event like this again. And you say, now, why was that? Why was that? This is a constitutional event. It was a constitutional event. Not a single council member bothered to say anything, to say, we researched the very code that we passed, and we think that it is correct, or we think it's not correct. Now, council members did make sure that the city knew about Psalm singing, and there were notes saying, did you see this? So the next day, September 23rd in the afternoon, a group of Christians met at City Hall to sing psalms. Now, not all those Christians were from Christchurch. People in town labeled that as Christchurch. If you remember the giant cross, that giant cross was not from a guy from Christchurch at all. That just was a Christian who showed up with the cross. The people that were singing next to me were not from Christchurch. They were from a church over in Pullman. So at the psalm singing, 3 individuals arrested, 2 cited for not following the health order. There were no restrictions on constitutional activity in the health order. So this is official policy, not law. So where did we go? On July 2020, when that was brought forward, the website said the health order was the law. In July, in the Daily News, that's our official paper, it's the law. It's not a guideline, it's the law. And it actually said, if you see someone without a mask, call the Moscow Police Department or report it. And to the public, that's me, Joe Schmo, it was maintained that the health order was law until it was rescinded. So where did we go? The psalm singers were tried in Latah County Court. On December 4th, they appealed and said, wait a minute, we want to motion and move that this case be dismissed. Well, the problem there was the day before, on December 3rd, our city attorney stated in a letter the health order was not law, but only an official policy statement. So you can see the constitutional issue here. This is a real problem when you arrest someone for following the law and saying that they didn't follow the law. That's a real constitutional problem. Yes, sir. So, and I'll run through this as fast as I can. On January 8th, the case was dismissed and a federal civil rights case started. So the whole time this went on for over a year now, the federal case is coming on, not one of our elected officials had said anything about the city destroying constitutional rights. Council members did ask what could be done against psalm singers. That's in the public record. And what is shown here is a complete lack of constitutional knowledge at all levels of our city government. Now, we have very good city staff, but someone should have stood up and said, this is wrong. That didn't happen. So under oath in the civil rights trial, both of our city attorneys had no understanding of the Constitution or our laws. Now, our city prosecutor said, but yeah, the ordinance. I wasn't aware the ordinance existed, quite frankly, until that motion. And Art, I'm going as fast as I can.
Yeah, you're into 5 minutes now.
Yes, sir. Now, for those that don't know, I appealed and wanted to have agenda on the administration committee and was rejected. I appealed for time on the agenda tonight, actually earlier, but to be on the agenda, and that was rejected. And then I appealed to the mayor to have more than 3 minutes for this issue, because this is instruction. This is not a public comment. It's instruction. And you denied that. Now, furthermore, on the blue paper that's out front, it says if it's not on the agenda, try to keep it within 3 minutes. So I'm moving as fast as I can.
Don't try, please do.
Okay, I will.
Please conclude.
Yes, sir. So our city attorney says that the health order was legitimate because the word shall is debatable. Now, what is the word shall? It is mandatory.
Sir, could you just cut to the chase, because you're delving into a lot of issues. There's litigation still pending. We can't comment on anything anyway. We appreciate the instruction on the constitutional law, but please wrap it.
Yes, sir. I cannot do that. I will go as fast as I can.
No, just wrap it, please.
I will do it as
Gavel
fast as I
you to it.
can.
Nope.
So
You've got
shall is
1 minute.
mandatory. Now, if shall is debatable, what happens? Parking fines don't have to be paid. If the way is clear and we come up to an intersection, there is no conflict, we can go right through. There is no traffic law. We decide how much we pay on our taxes. This is what happens when chaos is not mandatory. This is the opinion and the official position of the city of Moscow, not anyone else's. This is the official position. It's been like this for 24 years that I've been here. and that is completely unconstitutional. So, the exercise and enjoyment of religious faith and worship shall be forever guaranteed, and no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his religious opinions. That is our Constitution.
Okay, thank you. That's enough. You've gone 7 minutes.
Yes, sir.
That's-
And I'm just
that's
about
it.
finished.
Nope.
No.
No more.
No, thank you. Your time is up.
Finished.
All right, now,
Thank you for
if you
the
remember, a few years
We're going
ago,
into
Corey?
executive session?
Could you put us into recess, please?
now,
You down.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're back in session now. And we still have a few moments for the public comment. Would anybody else like to step up? Tell us what's on your mind.
In the 3-minute window.
Yes, in 3 minutes. Okay, no takers. Next up is a citizen commission report for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mike Ray and Rob Parrish.
Evening, Your Honor, council members. So before you tonight, we have Planning and Zoning Commission report. And before you is Rob Parrish. Rob's the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And Rob's been on the commission since 2015, been chair for the last few years. And before that, he was vice chair to Wendy McClure, who was the chair. And so just been a pleasure to work with Rob over the years. And I'd like to turn it over to him.
Welcome, Rob, and thank you, Mike.
Mayor Becky and counselors and Bill and Mia, nice to see you. Kenton, it's great to see you here with your class. So before we start, to me, the most important part of our presentation is an acknowledgement of the extraordinary work that Mike and Jennifer Fleischman do for us and for you as well. As you're probably all too aware, some of the issues that we get into are complex, a bit nuanced, and it's Mike's has done such an incredible job of explaining the issues to us so that we can make rational, intelligent discussions or have discussions and make decisions. So anyway, I'm stumbling all over myself, but Mike, thank you for the incredible work that you do. So as Mike mentioned, I'm chair. I'm kind of losing track, but I believe this is my third stint as the chair. It's kind of once elected. Dennis Wilson's our vice chair, and Rich Beebe is our second vice chair. Both Dennis and Rich have been called on to run meetings. They do a great job. So They've been a real treat to have standing behind. One of our other members, Victoria Seaver, is with us tonight. And you hijacked one of our members sitting at the end of the podium there. We miss you, Drew. Thank you. And we've replaced Drew with Sue Scott, who's a veteran of P&Z as well as council. So we're looking forward to working with her. And one of the things that was just a real delight this year is we celebrated with Joel Hamilton his 41st year of being on planning and zoning. That's an incredible achievement, but I can't tell you how much we appreciate his insights and his history with all the things that we've done. So it's been a real pleasure. This is a great group, Scott and Cole as well. So I think that we've got a really interesting group and well-versed in the issues. We'll make this kind of short. This has been a relatively quiet year for us.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah. Oh,
Way to go.
I should have. Sorry. Can I retract
Sure,
that?
you bet.
So we've got a couple of things. One of the things that's going to be coming before you next month is self-storage facility ordinance. We're updating that. And this one is kind of, there's a bit of an irony to it because as we are working for more affordable housing, downsizing, as Nels Reese is fond of saying, we love our stuff. So if we have smaller places, what are we going to do with all the stuff that we have that we don't want to lose? So there's a real need for storage facilities. And there were some really interesting discussions on how we should handle that. We want to make it more accessible, so it should be perhaps closer. And so we were looking at being able to provide storage facilities in some zones that it wasn't previously allowed. But we were really concerned as a commission about the design issues because we wanted it to fit into the community. We didn't want it to affect the basic feel of the community. So we had a lot of interesting debates about that. And I think we came up with some really good designs, and Mike will be bringing that before you. Didn't we already have the public hearing on that? So it's next up to come before you. Something that this is a work in progress. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but we're trying to update the buffer yard ordinance. And really what we're trying to do there is incorporate some better visuals. We're taking it to the matrix table that we've been kind of working on with other ordinances. And, the idea here really is to make it more effective, be a little bit more flexible, and a lot more understandable when people are working with this. So that, in fact, is on our agenda for Wednesday night. We're going to be talking about that at length and working on that. And perhaps sometime later this spring, we'll get that forwarded to you. One of the things that we're really striving to continue to do is keep abreast of issues that are important to the community. So continuing education is something that we talk about pretty regularly. Last year, Gina and Tyler Palmer came and gave us a really thorough briefing on water issues and PBAC. We want to have that conversation annually with the commission. So we're already working to get Gina and Tyler back to talk with us again about that. It was really informative for us, and I think it's an important issue to keep not only before the community, but before the commission as we go. Nils Peterson has been talking to us about affordable housing, which is a pretty key issue for all of us in the community right now. This is his second time with us. We had him with us last year. He just briefed the commission in February. We're going to make that an annual presentation as well. We want to keep that in the spotlight for us. So one other thing that we want to do is we want to meet with you. We would like to have a joint session with the commission and with council so that we can really talk about some of the issues that are of concern to you, issues that are of concern to us. I think would be beneficial to have an exchange of expectations. So we're going to be working with Mike to get that arranged. We don't, I think, have a date certain at this point, but we'd like to move forward with that. So with that, we try to make these mercifully short. If you have any questions, we'd be, one thing that I would like to say, something that I think is really beneficial, not only for us as a commission, but for the city, is that when I look out, Haley, Sandra, Gina, Maureen, and Drew have all either been a part of the commission or have been liaisons. And Art, of course, had many years on the commission. So you understand our issues and you understand the processes that we deal with. And that's much appreciated because we know that we're all dealing with this kind of singing from the same page, as it were. So I do appreciate the fact that so many of you have been involved with us. I think it's really important. And we look forward to working with Gina, who's our current liaison for this year. So with that, Maureen, yes.
Mine is not a question, but when I was on P&Z as the liaison, I want to say I was so impressed that you all took a lot of time to educate yourself, either reading materials or bringing someone in, and the goal of being on top of your issues and bringing in experts on it is impressive, and we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate that encourages us to continue doing that. But I think it's an important part of what we have to do. So I do appreciate the comment.
And I'd add too that thank you for bringing up the joint meeting issue, because that's something we used to do regularly. And it sort of evaporated in early 2020. And we got back to it. So thanks for bringing that up, because really it is beneficial to have that meeting.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm pleased that that's something that you're interested in as well. And yeah, 2020 disrupted so many. I mean, my first presentation for the annual report was via Zoom. So, it disrupted a lot of our normal activities. So I'm glad that we're getting back to that.
So we'll work on that.
Yeah, thanks, Art. Yeah.
I have lots of nice things to say about you guys. But I have to say that for a volunteer commission, which all of these are, right? These citizen commissions, I have been very impressed with your commission's responsibility that they take for what they're doing. The whole professional development thing is above and beyond in my mind. And it is really, just it's a neat experience. This is my first time. I feel like I moved up into like maybe the A League or the, because you guys do not mess around. There is discussion, but not frivolous discussion, probably because mostly I'm quiet at that point, but it's just very business-like, and you know that the decisions are solid. And I very much appreciate your leadership in the P&Z. It's just teaches me something every single time I go to the meetings.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Ditto.
And, and one of the things that's important, and this is kind of back to the earlier part of the discussion with Mike, is that we've got to understand the issues, and they're not always easy to understand. And Mike really does such an exceptional job of getting us through those issues and answering our questions, being patient with us, because sometimes we just flat don't understand what we're looking at. But, we work through it. And I think that you can have confidence that when we send something over to you, it's been well thought out, well discussed and debated. I mean, we certainly have debates about issues as we go along. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you again next year.
See you Wednesday.
If not sooner, at a joint meeting. Okay, next up is a public hearing for 706 West Palouse River Drive, proposed rezone. And word on public hearings is a formal court-like affair where the public hearing occurs with the staff opening it and presenting the salient facts, followed by any comments on behalf of the applicant. After that, we hear from the public with testimony in favor of, in opposition to, or of a general nature, after which the applicant has the ability to come up and rebut and provide more information to answer any questions the public brought up. Then we move on to the closure of the public hearing, and the council deliberates and reaches a decision. So with that, the public hearing is open. Mike.
Thank you again, Your Honor, council members. So before you tonight, we have a rezone request on behalf of Jim Swift. It's a 0.54 acre property, 706 West Blue River Drive. Proposed rezone from the current designation of multiple family residential, which is our R4 zone, to the residential office zone. Sure, everybody on the council is familiar with this piece of property. We've seen a few actions running east-west. You can see the subject property outlined in red, center of your screen. Anderson Frontier Park to the west, Anderson Frontier Additions to the north, vacant property here within Anderson 7th. Both these properties are bisected by Sunnyside Avenue, which is just happened to be constructed within this last year. So it currently connects, although it's not open yet, I don't believe. ITD Service Yard to the south of Palouse River Drive, and a manufactured home park to the south as well. And this is Gritman's Martin Wellness Center to the east. It's a closer view of the property. And then this is the plat the council saw in the last couple years. So Ben Gifford Court, there's a cul-de-sac on the property here to the north, Sunnyside Avenue. And of course, this was the subject property here in the southeast corner. Current comprehensive plan land use designation is high density residential, as well as the remainder of the property there to the north, as well as south of Palouse River Drive. As you transition to the north side of Sunnyside Avenue, it transitions into auto urban residential. And then of course, Gritman's Martin Wellness Center is suburban commercial to the east. So what high density residential states allows highest density residential development, common densities between 15 and 26 units per acre. Appropriate for this designation include those located adjacent to areas of higher activity, where there's a range of uses. Areas should be located adjacent or in close proximity to arterial or collector streets, which Palouse River Drive happens to be. New areas should be located near mixed-use activity areas and corridors that could accommodate multimodal transportation. And then it points to the R3, R4 residential office, RO zones as being the most appropriate for that designation. So it brings us to the current zoning configuration of the area. The property is zoned R4, as well as the properties to the north, transitioning to R3. There is a piece of R4 to the south, a residential property, but primarily it's motor business on the south side of Palouse River Drive. So this would be the proposal to rezone to residential office. So the RO zone in the zoning code's moderate intensive zone, including both office and high density housing, serves as a transitional zone between residential and commercial or industrial zoning districts, appropriately applied in the following circumstances: on the perimeter of commercial or industrial districts where they abut residential land uses, where transportation network use is greater than desirable for lower density residential uses, where landforms create sites which are reasonably accessible by transportation systems and are buffered from nearby residential areas. And lastly, where development patterns in a neighborhood will allow development of moderate intensity to occur without producing adverse visual impact or harm to the transportation network. Really a wide variety of uses within the residential office zone, residential and commercial. Really the primary difference between R4 and residential office is there's no cap on professional offices like there is in the R4 zone, 2,000 square feet in size for floor areas, typically what those uses are capped at R4. Also includes some additional professional offices like veterinary services, restaurants up to 1,500 square feet in size, group and small childcare facilities, public parks, rec facilities, personal care services, and bed and breakfast inns. Looking at Palouse River Drive, like I mentioned previously, minor arterial street. There is curb gutter sidewalks recently constructed on the south side of the street as part of the Eddington subdivision to the west. And they will be constructed on the north side as part of Anderson's 7th edition. So a lot of those missing areas on the north side of Palouse River Drive will be filled in with this subdivision. So in the future, Palouse River Drive will be constructed to a 36-foot wide paved roadway with bike lanes on both sides of the street once those improvements are done. There is existing water sewer mains within the surrounding streets. There's sufficient capacity to accommodate any future use the RO zone would allow. P&Z did conduct a public hearing. It occurred on January 25th of this year, and they recommended approval of the proposed rezone request with no conditions. Staff's recommendation for the council tonight is to conduct the public hearing and upon consideration of any testimony received, approve the proposed zoning ordinance under suspension of the rules, requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary, and adopt P&Z's reasoned statement of relevant criteria. And I'd certainly try to answer any questions you had.
Okay, doesn't look like any at the moment. Any further words from the applicant?
Good evening, Your Honor and council members. I'm Scott Becker with Hodge and Associates, 405 South Washington. I just wanted to say this is probably the most vetted property in all of Moscow. But I am here to answer any questions you might have or if something comes up during the public hearing. But otherwise, Mike covered everything really well. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay, at this point, public's turn. Anyone who's in favor of this application, step on up and tell us what you think. Anybody who's opposed to this application, it's your turn. And anything of a general nature. Okay, seeing no mobs swarming the podium, close the public hearing at this time. And council, please engage in deliberation. Julia.
Mike, can you, so I'm going to say the same thing I've said at the 3 other meetings we've had on this property. Can you show me, will this have multiple driveways into this business now?
I believe the council last considered a lot line adjustment request by the applicant to eliminate the flagpole portion on Sunnyside Avenue. So that's been approved, and it's my understanding that the applicant intends to move forward with that lot line adjustment in order to eliminate the flagpole portion from Sunnyside access. The intention, it's my understanding that the property will contain a commercial use, or it's proposed to, which the council's granted permission in order to use Palouse River Drive as a point of access.
So if it's zoned RO, is there a limit to the number of entry and exit points it can have?
It's irrelevant of the zone, so it's just limited to one access unless it's ingress and egress off of Palouse River Drive. That's the only other circumstance, but typically you would just have one approach per property frontage.
Okay. I am just continue to be concerned about the number of driveways in that area,
Sure, yeah.
which I've said at every hearing.
So just to understand this, follow up on Julia's, that means that in the business section of it, there'll be one driveway in and out, right?
Yeah, it's based upon the use. So residential allows up to 20 feet in width for the approach. Commercial is a little bit wider, so that's 30 feet in width. The only other circumstance is if there's one driveway for ingress and the other one for egress. That would be the only circumstance where you'd allow 2 approaches.
In which case, the same number of vehicles would be going in and out as if you had one.
Correct.
I think a couple of things to note is it's a pretty small property for the council, and having multiple access points makes the property not very accessible or usable. And so I think how they're approaching it is it's pretty straightforward. So those are my thoughts on it.
Mr. Mayor, I also am anticipating, even with, is it an arterial or a collector? I always get them mixed up. What is Palouse River Drive
It's an
designated?
arterial.
So even knowing that we're seeing development along Palouse River Drive, I would anticipate with the eventual finishing of the city ball fields, like I would expect that stretch to see a lot of traffic, but also for us to like maintain, do arterials, what did I just say? Arterials are usually 35 miles an hour limit. Is that right? And so I'm feeling like even with seeing what access points and the kind of the mixed development you see on like Mountain View and stuff, I hear your concern, but I'm also not expecting Palouse River Drive to see traffic outside of like what we would expect for any other arterial in town. And I'm glad that the owner is getting creative on how to make sure every square inch of land is getting used. So
Is there a motion in here someplace? Someone?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I move that we approve the proposed zoning ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring three complete and separate readings, that it be read by title and published by summary, and adopt the Planning and Zoning Commission's reasoned statement of relevant criteria.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Haley,
I
Drew,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
and Julia.
Aye.
Okay, there you go. And now we have an ordinance. What's our number?
This will be 2023-02.
02. Okay. Ordinance 2023-02. An ordinance of the City of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the rezoning of an approximately 0.79 acre property described in Section 2 from multiple family residential R4 to residential office RO, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, providing this ordinance be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Done.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is a riveting presentation on the comprehensive annual
I'm
financial
excited.
report. Sarah
excited.
Banks and Nick
I
Nicholson.
can tell if he's being facetious or not.
Are there spreadsheets and stuff?
It's so riveting.
We're looking for good stuff here.
That's right. So good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. As you are aware, the Finance Department has been working hard since September to close out our fiscal year end. We recently received our GFOA award for fiscal year 21, which is our 19th consecutive award. And so we're working hard to be able to compile and complete so we can submit for our 20th. I'd like to give a special thank you to all of the city staff who have helped compile the information, in particular to Renee Tack, our Assistant Finance Director, who has actually head up the audit by herself for the last 2 years, which is pretty amazing, and to Nick Nicholson and his staff at Presnell Gage for all their hard work on this. So with that, I'd like to have Nick Nicholson come up and provide our presentation. All right.
Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. Make this all right. Well, my name is Nick Nicholson. I work for Presnell Gage Accounting, based out of Moscow here. And we've been hired to audit the city of Moscow and the financial performance of the city for the fiscal year 2022. I'll give you a brief background of kind of what the audit entails, and then we'll go into kind of some highlights that we have for it. So basically what an audit entails from an auditor's perspective is we look at your financial information, we look at the transactions in which you participate in, and we do what's called a risk-based audit. Well, what that means is we look at areas of your processes, areas with your industry, the governmental industry, and we determine what are the riskiest areas related to your activity. And those are the areas that we focus on in order to come to an opinion on your financial statements as a whole and on your procedures over your financial information. So ultimately, what that means is if we determine that a certain area is a high risk area, we're going to focus on that. Sometimes those high risk areas are determined by just sheer dollar size, if it's a major dollar amount within it, or it's a process that is highly involved in the way that things operate, and those are the areas that we test. So expenditures, for example, is a great one. We really test and we use statistical sampling to basically determine, are you processing information throughout your finance department in according with your approved procedures, and also with procedures that are reasonable given whatever the process is. And then ultimately, at the end of that, we come up with an opinion. I give this spiel every year. The financial statements themselves are all information that you guys see on a monthly, biweekly, however often you guys meet basis. So the information within it is already something that you've seen. It's actually your information. It is not our information. We are not compiling it. You are compiling it. So the role of an auditor is simply to put an opinion on it. And within that, there are 3 opinions within a financial statement that an auditor has. There's the opinion basically on the financial statements as a whole. Are they materially correct is the terminology that we use. And then the second opinion would be on your internal control processes over the financial reporting and over compliance. Are your procedures operating effectively and according to your approved procedures? And then we have a third opinion based on federal expenditures. When your federal expenditures, basically you get a federal grant or federal programs and you spend more than $750,000 within a year, we have to do an additional audit, basically, which is called a single audit, where we actually test your compliance with your major federal programs, and we give another opinion on those federal programs as well. All 3 of those opinions we have given what we call a clean opinion, unmodified, however you want to go about it. The terminology is legalese, but ultimately we feel that you're operating effectively. The information within the financial statements accurately depicts the position and the activity of the city of Moscow. So that's our highest. It doesn't sound glowing and great, but that's the best that we can give. So kudos to you guys. So I am going to kind of go into basically just overall summary. There is one item that I am going to highlight. You guys were presented with a draft. It has not been finalized. You guys will have the opportunity to approve it. We are going to highlight, there are going to be a couple reclassifications, as we call them. You guys might have been given a heads up. Basically, the background of that is in the review, there's a new pronouncement, the main reclassification, a new pronouncement relating to leases. It's brand new this year, first time it's implemented. Unfortunately, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which oversees it, has not given a whole lot of information in how they wanted it represented. So we kind of moved along, and as we received more information, as we were reviewing the final, we noticed that there was a couple line items that they wanted in a different spot. The numbers themselves will not change. Primarily, they're going to stay the same number, but ultimately it was held within an account that's called unearned revenue, which is a liability account, and it's moved to another liability type account called deferred inflows, and they want to see it separate. So we are reclassifying that. So that won't be exactly how it's presented on the draft that you have, but ultimately the the net position doesn't change, and the income is not affected materially. So then there is one other reclassification, kind of the same item related to, we give the spiel the pension, the PERSI allocation, which is basically given by the state. We do an allocation based on the information that they give, and there was a couple accounts that are lumped together that need to be shifted to another line item. Same numbers. Not going to change the bottom line, but I did want to highlight that so you didn't think that the one in front of you, when it's ultimately issued, is like, whoa, this is I didn't even see this number coming before. So those are the items I wanted to highlight before I kind of go into my summary. So the financial statements, it's actually the title of it is now called A Published Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Annually used to be basically Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. They switched it, and so they say you're not allowed to say it anymore, so we don't say it. Basically, the layout of it is it's governed by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, what we call GASB, and is in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's basically who governs the format and the information and the presentation of, and also how we go about our audit. Ultimately, like I said, the management, your guys' management is responsible for basically the documentation, the detail, the internal controls, and actually the preparation of the financial statements and the presentation itself. So ultimately, you guys have to sign off, your management has to sign off and say, this is our financial information. We take full ownership of it. Our audit responsibility, express an opinion, as I mentioned, and there's those 3 opinions. And here, I'm just going to go through, give you some quick highlights. Basically, at the end of the year, the government-wide net position increased by about 11.9 million, which is about an 8% increase. This is, I kind of identified within business type governmental. Your business type entities are your water, sewer, garbage. Now stormwater is the new one. And then the governmental is basically everything else. Your general fund, your parks and rec, all those types of funds. The city's government restricted fund balance. So basically at the end of the year, their fund balance is basically your equity. If you talking in a business world, this is what you have to carry over into the new year. Portions of that are restricted, basically meaning it's not touchable for general operations moving forward. These restricted in the governmental funds are broken out in between for future debt service. The highway user tax it has a restriction on how you can spend that money. So it's not available for general government purposes. And then for like cultures and recreation related to the Hamilton will, there's still some money left in that. The business type, you can see the restricted net position is also got some restricted for debt service, and then restricted for specific water, sewer, garbage projects and continued operations. You can see the total government-wide operations. You can see over the years the amount of actual operating expenses within the district or within the city. Fiscal year 2022, just under 38 million total expenditures. 2021 was about 32.6. 2020 was about 36.8. So basically, as we go through the financial statements, there's multiple financial statements. I'm going to summarize a little bit different than what's up here. Basically, there's 2 sets of major financial statements. There's a government-wide statements, GASB statements is what they're called, and they're the statement of net position, statement of activities in your packet. Those are a set of financial statements on an accounting basis that mirrors a business style. We've talked about this. This is what we call basically full accrual. In the business world, items such as capital assets, you build a new building or you buy a big piece of equipment, you capitalize your asset, you depreciate it over its life, and that's how it's expended and used through depreciation. Debt is put on your balance sheet. Basically, this is how much debt I owe, and here's how I'm going to spend it over its life and pay it down. That is the government wide. Then there is what's called the fund financial statements. Those fund financial statements operate on what's called modified accrual. And this more reflects actually how you guys operate on more of a budgetary style basis, meaning that those capital assets, we're not going to capitalize them and depreciate them over their life. We're going to budget for how much capital assets we're going to buy this year. We've got to have a budget for, hey, we've got a new piece of equipment that we need to buy. We're going to budget $50,000 for that piece of equipment. And that's the primary difference. It's more cash basis, but it still has you're accruing your receivables, those type of things, but you're not capitalizing assets. You're not putting your debt on the balance sheet. You're basically expending funds in a budgetary style basis.
I thought you said they were fun. So that's why I was catching up, but fund, got it.
Fund, yeah.
I mean, it's all fun.
I don't know how many people would say fund when it relates to the audited financial statements. So,
Nick, I have a question
Yeah.
real quick. We do these 2 different styles because of basically the 2 different natures of the way it.
Yes, and it's governed by different folks. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board has the government-wide statements, and the purpose for those, specifically for governments, is generally related to getting debt. So somebody who is going to issue a bond or a bank going to give a loan wants to be able to compare you to every other type of entity to determine your debt worthiness. And so they can put those set of financial statements into their system. They can compare it to XYZ Corporation down the street, determine whether or not you are credit worthy and whether they're going to give you debt, or it can affect your rate as well. And that's what the purpose of that is. The fund statements are more on an operational side. It gives you more information for how to operate going forward on a budgetary style basis. And so that's ultimately the reason for the two sets.
Okay, thank you.
Within the financial statements, in the fund statements, there are multiple columns as you go through. I'm not going to highlight each one, but ultimately there are major funds when it comes to your government-wide. And then the rest of the funds that aren't considered major funds are summarized. So the goal of the financial statements is to highlight your big items. Your general fund is going to be always a major fund because it's your general operating fund and is actually required. Then there's special revenue funds, streets, cultures and rec, Hamilton, 1912, all of those different are other special revenue funds. If those basically rise to a level base that they have enough revenue, expenses, or enough assets, they can be a major fund and highlighted as well. And so here is highlighted in the government operating funds. These are the non-water, sewer, garbage, non-business. Here's kind of a trend of your fund balance at the end of the year. Blue being general fund, red being streets, green being cultures and rec. And you can kind of see as time goes on, the fund balance continues to, has been continued to increase in the general fund. Actually all across the board, streets have kind of fluctuated a little bit more, but ultimately you see your major area of carryover is in the general fund, and that's to be expected. You want your general fund to have enough funds moving forward to operate the next fiscal year. We kind of touched on that. Public safety is another area. So the general operates basically everything out. Public safety combined or uses basically police, fire, public health, engineering, those type of services. So those are the key items. When you see expenditures for public safety, those are what they're spent for. You can see here's kind of a trend of the general fund revenues and expenditures, and basically showing how you consume or how you've been able to fund, and in some cases close to break even. But ultimately, over the last couple of years, you've had a little bit of an increase, and that's where the fund balance increase comes in, is that you've had income over your expenditures. You can see your general government expenditures, the primary portion, and your public safety has stayed pretty consistent in amount over the last 5 years there. Recreation and culture, obviously Parks and Rec are the primary areas of that, are, just your swimming pool, your youth center, the different parks. 1912 Center is also within that. Hamilton also is considered to be cultures and recreation, but it does have its own separate fund until it's completely spent. This is one of the areas public a lot of times likes to know. All right, we see a lot of these parks. How are we funding these? How much are we spending? You can see obviously the cultures and recreation is the biggest part of that. You can see this year actually the Hamilton portion is quite a bit up. Primarily, you contributed to the ice rink, so that's why that's larger there. The next major fund is a street fund. You can see revenues transfers in from general fund, basically funding the expenses, the transfers out. And so you can kind of see over time, 2020, obviously kind of an odd year. Revenue did not cover total expenditures. It reduced the fund balance during that year. 2021, 2022, you've started to kind of replenish that from 2020. Within now, that's kind of your highlighted of the major governmental funds. The major enterprise funds are water, sewer, stormwater, sanitation. As I mentioned before, they're treated differently. They actually don't have a set of fund statements that have the separate accounting. They are treated business throughout the financial statements because they are a business fund. So they will capitalize assets. They will put debt on the books. You can see here's kind of a over time revenue kind of has gone up over the time. And then in 2022, in the water fund, you see actually kind of restructured stormwater and water. And so there was a decrease in revenue and expenses related to kind of a reallocation of that. And you can see 2021, there was some major water improvement projects ultimately resulting in why that was in excess of revenues last year. Debt basically makes up the difference in that. So you can see here's the net position over time, water capital projects. Net position in total has actually from last year to this year was pretty consistent. And basically the increase in the regular was offset by a decrease in the amount that's gone into the project. So sewer is pretty consistent. The revenues, you follow your rates. Your rates increase incrementally from year to year generally. Expenses related to the capital of the sewer fund over the last couple of years, you've had a couple sewer projects that have started to go into that. And same thing, net position continues to increase. Sewer capital projects over the last couple of years, larger portion. Stormwater, brand new. So you've got 1 year of activity within that. Primarily just has some expenses in the dot for revenue for that new. Yeah. So the same. This is basically just over or just under $430,000 of net position in the new stormwater fund. Sanitation, kind of the same thing as sewer rates. You guys have kept your rates pretty consistent over time, and expenses are pretty consistent as far as that goes. So not a lot of fluctuation within the sanitation fund. Those are kind of the highlights. So I will open the floor for questions, yawns, anything of that nature.
Who has questions?
Thank you for being so enthusiastic in your presentation of the accounting.
It's my nature.
Even being able to gain smiles sometimes from us is a big thing for somebody who's an accountant. Thank you.
Cool.
I have a couple questions. Actually, or more just comments than anything. I really appreciate this view. We do get a ton of information regularly, but I really appreciated a couple of the things you put in the appendix, like the property tax, just like really clear side-by-side comparison of property tax intake from the city. I also appreciated like the head count on page 126 that like outlined the head count to spend ratio. And so like some of those things, we probably get them through the workshops and other experiences, but it's nice to also have someone else stick them in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, in the background, that's primarily your staff putting it in there. But what it is to qualify for that GFOA award, you have to put in statistical section. So that's actually governed a little bit by that. And yeah.
Sarah, I love those. Those are great. And yeah, and I my only other comment was it's really fun getting to see how much we accomplish with the city without having a super significant headcount increase, even with a slight increase in population. I'm really proud of what we're able to do. And so I'm proud of the finance team.
Mhm.
And thank you for making an audit make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And dollars. Ha.
Yeah.
So that's all I have.
I say we keep Nick coming back every year because it's understandable.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And you say it with a smile so that when you use words like debt,
Yeah.
things like that, it's not nearly as bad. So I appreciate your enthusiasm. You two silent
Heroes.
powers out in the audience. Thank you for taking as good care of our finances as you do.
And it was riveting. I think we need popcorn next time. Great.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Okay,
I move that we accept the City of Moscow audited annual comprehensive financial report of fiscal year 2022 as presented.
I second.
Sort of a tie for second.
It's true.
So, okay, Drew gets it.
Right on.
Okay. For voting, Haley,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
and Drew.
Aye.
Sweet.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
thank you,
Thank
Nick.
you very much. And yeah, I've just like as kind of a final note, I really appreciate the opportunity to work with the city. President Gages and our relationship with the city is all we value it greatly, and we thank you. Yeah, your staff, Sarah and Renee, are great to work with. We get information quickly and whenever we need it. So we appreciate it. So
Great.
it makes auditing much easier. So
Yeah.
oh, thank you.
See you next March.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Item number 8, consideration of mayor and city council salary adjustments. Bill Belknap.
That.
Is the window?
They're arresting Nick for his accounting.
Yeah, really, Nick's already speeding.
It's a full fire truck and an ambulance.
Great.
Just gonna take this opportunity to dump out the rest of the
Okay. Oh, what did I do? Okay.
That's really fancy, Mr.
you break
Belknap.
Yeah, now I need to get rid of that.
You broke it.
Look at that.
Ooh,
Thanks, Corey.
just a look from Corey. Got it.
I know, it just scared me enough. All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Just had made a slight change in the presentation, so I need to bring up a different version. So just a little bit of background. Under Idaho Code, compensations for mayor and council members are required to be fixed by ordinance, and they're required to be fixed by ordinance no less than 75 days before any general city election. So I think the intent there is that the council doesn't get elected and then decide to give themselves a large raise, that essentially that happens prior to an election so the electors have a chance to evaluate the activities of their council. So that's the date of the 75 days prior to the election. We actually have a slightly different standard that's been adopted in our code. So in Chapter 8 of Title 1, it states that it shall be fixed by ordinance as it does in state law, but it also states that it will be done every 2 years from the date of the previous adjustments in accordance and in proportion with adjustments in the Consumer Price Index as published by the United States Department of Labor. Such adjustments must be specifically approved by ordinance at least 6 months prior to the effective date of such adjustment. So we have a practice of every 2 years or effective on January 1st. It has to be done no later than 6 months prior to that effective date. Our last adjustment was effective January 1st of 2022. The next one will be coming up in 2024, which is why we have the ordinance before you tonight, a little bit more than 6 months ahead of when it would be effective. When I went through this process, first time that I have managed this one, I tried to decipher the code's not very, our code, the city code is not very specific of which consumer price index is utilized. There are probably 6 good candidates, whether it's all consumers or all wage earners, or whether it's West Coast, or whether it's in different city class sizes. So I did try to go through and determine what had been utilized in the past. It also was a little bit unclear on how that adjustment would be calculated. So in your packet this evening is an ordinance that would specify the index that would be used and what would be utilized as the method of calculation of that adjustment. So this was the last one passed in 2021. In the recitations, it talks about the city council deems it appropriate to increase the salaries of the mayor and city council in accordance with the consumer price index based upon January to January index for the past 24 months. And reported a 2.1% for 2019 and a 2.4% for 2020, pursuant to both city code and state code. So I went back trying to find, okay, if it's looking at a January to January for those years, that would have been 1.6% in 2019 and 2.5% in 2020. The reality of what we were actually reusing was it was an annual average from 17 and 18. And the reason is that's how we're going to go through the budget development process. So if we're developing the budget for 2019, we're doing that really beginning in 2018. And the only CPI data that's available at that time is 2017. And so the numbers, and this was as a practice, had been established under prior finance directors of essentially using the city's budgeted CPI that we use as a baseline for potential cost of living market adjustments for city employees and kind of carried that number forward into the council adjustments. But if you really were trying to look at the wording of the ordinance and the years stated, you couldn't find a number that would have matched that percentage. It really was coming from essentially 2 years prior. So the 19 number is coming from 17 and the 20 number was actually coming from 2018. Thus the intent of wanting to try to help clarify this in the update. So for this current adjustment, now looking again, in the ordinance as drafted, specifies the specific CPI series, specifically states we're going to use the annual average, because if you just pick a particular month, and 2021 is a good example, the January to January was 1.4%, but then inflation heated up in the later part of the year. If you would have picked January, it would have been 1.4%. If you would have picked December to December, it would have been 7.0. So it's why we historically use the annual average as a basis of looking at cost and living adjustments for city employees. So you can see for 2021, that annual average was 4.7%. And in 2022, it really heated up when we ended up with an 8% annual average for 2022. So the proposed ordinance, as I mentioned, would specify the CPI index, which I have some corrections to, which is shown on the screen here shortly. It will also specify that we're using an annual average as the metric to be utilized to make that adjustment. The other thing I'd note is and I'll have some screenshots here, but somehow when the Word document that showed it in legislative format, the ordinance needs to be in, was converted in the packet to a PDF. It accepted the changes. So what's in your packet is not in legislative format. I did hand out a copy of the ordinance before the meeting began, so you'd have that to reference, and I'll show screenshots for the audience so you can specifically see what's being changed in the ordinance that's being presented to you tonight. So utilizing those indexes, we'd have those two adjustments that become effective in January 21st of 2024. So for the mayor, it'd move compensation from $21,1978 per month to $23,9696 per month. And for the council, it moved from the current rate of $734.93 per month to $831.03 per month. So that'd be the effect of the adjustments. Now, this is the shown legislatively, but I will note that there are two changes of what's shown here and what I just actually handed out to you before the meeting, because I had the series ID number incorrect. Unfortunately, I read off the bottom of the page, which was leading into the next series of the indexes. So what's shown on the screen is what I'm asking the council to consider tonight. So it would be, rather than CWU, it's going to be CUUR, and then the rest of the numbers and letters would remain the same. And the title is all urban consumers, not the urban wage earners and clerical workers. So just wanted to clarify that, just miscopied that title. Everything else would remain the same. So it's on the screen. I've already updated the draft ordinance that the mayor would sign. And then the other changes that weren't shown legislatively was actually the change in the rates. So that's how the ordinance should read. It's striking out the prior rates and inserting the new rates, and the effective date being January 1st of 2024. So staff's recommendation this evening is to approve the proposed ordinance with those amendments as noted, making those salary adjustments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
I have a question. So this series ID, CUU, whatever. Okay. So that's very specific. And are you very sure that that's always published and that it's not going to change?
Oh, yeah.
Because what if in a couple of years they name it something else?
They do abandon series and they discontinue and they start a new series. If they do that, we'd have to change it. They did modify this back in 1996. So there's an old series that stopped in 96, and then this series has continued since that time.
Okay.
So it does have a fairly extended history. If it does change, we'll make adjustments as needed.
We just adjust the ordinance?
Yeah.
This is a silly question, probably. So the number, we got these numbers because we took the 8% and the 4.7% and we added them both. And so the numbers that we're showing in the track changes are a 12.7% increase.
Actually, slightly more than 12.7 because I compound year over year.
Math.
Yeah, the first year. Otherwise, the council gets shortchanged in actually adjusting, since you could do a 2 year to 2 year to get that total compounded rate. But just if you don't if you don't take the first year's adjustment and then apply the second year's, you essentially are falling behind the CPI index. So it actually ends up being slightly closer to 13% rather than 12.7 with that compounding of the 8% on top of the 4.7% of the preceding year.
Okay. Groovy. Mr. Mayor, I don't have questions for Bill. I guess I'm looking for some well, maybe not soapboxing, but I'm noodling and I don't know if other people have questions for Bill before I start noodling.
I don't hear anymore.
Okay, groovy. I don't have any concerns about pinning this to the consumer price index. And I was talking about it with my husband on the walk to City Hall. I've got some mixed feelings. I don't do this job for the money, but I also acknowledge that it is really important that we don't box out people or make it unattainable for people who wouldn't be able to do it without being fairly compensated. And so I guess what I was musing about on the walk down was I also hear that we've got a lot of citizens who are concerned about the budget, and I don't have concerns about the budget, but I do feel like this is if it could be a small way for us to show that we are hearing the concerns of those people by not voting for an increase per se. And so I've been going back and forth on it since about 5 o'clock when I started walking down. So I'm sharing that's where my thoughts are with this. I don't have concerns about the methodology. And again, I don't want to be discouraging people from running who otherwise wouldn't be able to without some financial compensation. So just sharing my thoughts.
Can I ask you a question on that? So would you be open to the idea of another number?
I mean, then it would undo all the work you guys did for the.
Well, that in the way city code reads, it shall be adjusted in that way. So unless the council
enough.
wants to
Yeah.
modify the city code to say it may be, the council may choose not to. Now, individual council members could choose not to accept the
Right.
increase if you wish to.
Right.
But the way it's set up in city code, it will be adjusted by the CPI. I'm just trying to clarify which CPI index will be used, that it's the annual average, not a monthly, and then just applying that. So it's not, which is why this needs to be treated differently than
Right.
staff adjustments for cost of living, because we use the CPI as instruction but we can't always fund that for staff. It's obviously a much larger impact across the payroll. But for the council members, the way the code reads currently is it will be adjusted by CPI. So unless we modify the ordinance in some different
Right.
manner,
Okay.
then I think it would be difficult for it to deny. The individual council members could certainly deny to receive the additional compensation. We could work the details of that out. Or you can instruct staff to modify the ordinance to be that it's adjusted as the council sees fit from time to time, or with some different language. But currently, it specifically states that it will be the CPI that will be used to make that adjustment.
Julia.
I'm lucky enough to be able to sit on both council, but also other volunteer boards. And I know that it can be really difficult for people who really need that compensation. And so I agree with Haley, like it's hard. You have to have mixed feelings about it. But I do think in order to keep people in these positions that we need to keep up with inflation. So.
And also keep in mind the amount of responsibility that rests on each of your shoulders too, because in a very real sense, the counselors here are Moscow in every legal sense of the word. And so there's a lot of responsibility that you get for $830 a month.
And I don't know if it's helpful at all for the council, but we did do a salary survey of all cities, really between 20,000 and 50,000. And even after this adjustment, our current council compensation is about 9% below the average compensation across all the 15 cities we surveyed.
That's good to know.
I appreciate you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Can I?
You may.
Okay, thank you.
Feel free.
I appreciate you kind of sorting this, sussing it out, Bill. I realized it was a lovely walk down memory lane and kind of a confusing one at that. I hear exactly what my co-counselors are saying. I happen to fall into the camp with Julia in that this can be seen as a wage or as a recruitment tool for future counselors. It's not a lot of money. None of us are up here because of the money. I can pretty much say that, so, but it is a responsibility, and compensation for that kind of the time that it takes and the responsibility, I think, is important. So I will be in favor of this.
Motion?
I will make a motion. I recommend approval of the proposed ordinance making salary adjustments for the mayor and city council effective January 1 of 2024.
Second.
And seconded. Okay. All right, Julia,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Haley,
No.
and Gina.
Aye.
Okay, the ordinance passes. Thank you all. And
Represent that small portion of the city. Of the constituents.
we have ordinance 2023-03.
You got it.
An ordinance of the City of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the amendment of Moscow's City Code Title I, Chapter 8, providing for a clarification regarding the calculation of increases in the salaries of city elective officers and the prescribed increase of said salaries effective upon January 1st, 2024, providing that provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, and providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from the date of its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Is this a first reading? Did the motion include
It probably did
I
not.
don't think it did.
No, it did not.
Should we
So
modify?
if we could maybe go back and if the maker of the motion is okay approving this under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings that be read by title only.
Published by summary?
By some.
And published by
Some
summary.
summary.
Okay, yes, I will amend.
Thank you.
that.
Seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Julia,
Aye.
Maureen,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Haley,
No.
Gina.
Aye.
Okay, right
Thank
back
you.
where we were, and now we're all legal. Thank you, City Attorney Mia Bautista.
Yes.
Thanks for following the Constitution for us.
Before we end it, I want to say thank you to Bill, because I think the answer is sometimes when you inherit a new job, you look at that job and you do what's always been done in the past. And it was apparent in your presentation and looking in the materials that you had to put a lot of work into coming up with what does that mean and how do we apply it here without a justification, what is our justification so I can defend that, even if it's different than what we've done in the past. So thank you for being so scrupulously honest on everything you do.
Assiduous.
There we go.
Assiduous.
Okay, item number 9, set fiscal year 2024 budget hearing date.
Thank you, Your Honor. So per Idaho code, we do have to notify Lake Tuck County the public hearing date for our annual budget for the FY 2024 by no later than April 30th of each year. So we are requesting the council set that hearing date for August 7th, 2023, and we can provide that notification to the Lake Tuck County Auditor's Office.
I just have a question, Mr. Mayor. Are we, I know we were required to notify the county. Are we using the online town hall notification system yet that the state set up as well?
Not that I'm aware
Okay,
of.
I will
Yeah.
just take it offline. I will send an email because
Sure.
I've got a couple questions, but I have no concerns, and I move that we set August 7th, 2023 as the public hearing date for the City of Moscow fiscal year 2024 budget.
Second.
Give that one to Maureen. So, Maureen,
Aye.
Julia,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Haley,
Aye.
Drew,
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. And that takes us clean to the end of our regular agenda, and we move on into city council reports. Maureen.
Okay, so I went to the Moscow Urban Renewal Association meeting, and basically Presnell Gage, who seems to be our accountant for most city events, conducted the annual evaluation for that as well and gave us a very positive response. And it looks good. We also talked about the 6th and Jackson development and the Previously, it had been moved back, and now the date for submissions is May 5th. And they have us, just so kind of a repeat of what we've done before, so people know the process. Submission is May 5th. The city staff is going to look at that. After that comes a subcommittee made up of U of I people, business people, community people, as well as one council member who's on the URA, Sandra Kelly. And then in April, we'll begin looking at exactly what that schedule looks like and how that's getting laid out. Farmers market. This is really fun. The farmers market had just started their poster art project. And so I encourage everyone to go between now and 8 o'clock on Friday morning to vote. I don't know, I forget exactly the numbers, like 8 or something, posters, and you get to pick which one you like the best. And it's kind of a popularity contest on your taste. So, so here's how you do it. You go to the webpage, moscowarts.submittal.com. Okay, so go, and if you get lost, just put in farmers market, right? Farmers market art project, and you will come up with this. But it's really good because I think people have worked really hard on their posters, and make sure that you take a vote on which one you like the best. The last thing I have to say is another hit here for the applause for the plastic project, which was started by our dear friend and former colleague, Catherine Bonzo. In February, we had 2,320 loads of film. So what does that mean? You can, on the first Saturday of every month, you can take your plastic, soft plastic, like plastic bags, things like that, not plastic containers, or you wrap something up. Anything that's 2 to 4 film on it, you can take it to the recycle center, and they will then help make it into Trex. There we go. So go and take your plastics that are pliable, soft, and take them to the recycle center on the first Saturday of the month. That's it.
Gina.
Okay, tree commission was canceled. I cried for like 3 days. But we're working on t-shirts, and that's kind of exciting. So P&Z, you guys heard from Rob Parrish, will meet again this Wednesday. Wednesday. I'm looking at my P&Z buddy Victoria out there. Historic Preservation Commission, that's another sleeper group. What a great group what fun. They are doing all kinds of stuff. And the most exciting part is the potential university historic district. And it's really cool. And Nils Reese happens to be on the commission with me and brought like 87 things to read, which nobody is surprised by, but really interesting pieces. I mean, it's for an architecture geek like me, I think it's pretty fun. Very, very excited. Again, people who take their commission time seriously. We got to meet over in the Haddock building, and that was beautiful because it was just a nice evening and everything. So, and let's see. Oh, and in P&Z this week, we were talking buffer yards. I learned that tonight, so I'm kind of excited about that. I will meet also with, on Thursday night, I believe, and that I'm not looking at my calendar to be really clear on that, but there's a new Rotary president here in town, Tim Thompson, I believe is his last name, and we're going to meet we're going to meet and have a coffee and just talk about Rotary and kind of see where they're going. And I'm kind of excited about it. So that's all I've got.
Cool. Julia.
Well, my Transportation Commission and Arts Commission meetings were both canceled thanks to spring break. And I was here in the cold.
Lucky you.
Well, everybody else was warm places.
Some of us were at
Some places were, okay. But I did do art walk for the Moscow Arts Commission. And I was so lucky to present the award for awards just down in the box gallery downstairs. And you should totally go look at it because the winner was an award that says, meh. They're very funny. I have been appointed to the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust. So my first meeting for that is tomorrow. And I was able to attend some meetings on the potential crises in the mobile home parks in the community. And just wanted to say that Wednesday from 6 to 8, there's another meeting at the U of I Law Building in the courtroom regarding mobile home park renters' rights. So that was my spring break.
Ms. Sunshine.
Well, they're giving me a hard time because in my other world, I got to take a group of University of Idaho students to Puerto Rico for an alternative spring break where we did some good works, which is ironic because I'm the one sitting up here that doesn't like the sun and the heat. So, yeah, I'm glad to be back in the cold and the rain. Today was like a perfect weather day for me. But in my council world, I went to, right before we left, I went to the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department meeting. It's just a good group of people. They're trying really hard to figure out how to make things work with not very much. So I always enjoy going to them. I don't have a whole lot to report. They are just trying to keep volunteers around and figure out how to get to the fires and to the emergencies and to keep everything running. And so far they're doing a good job and I appreciate the efforts that go into that. We're scheduled to have our PBAC meeting, but because of spring break, they moved it. So that's coming up this week, which I'm looking forward to. That's always a smart, really smart group of people that I learn from every time I go to one of their meetings. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, going from there. That's what I have.
Drew.
Yeah, March 2nd, I went to the affordable, fair and affordable housing meeting. Nils Peterson presented on the Affordable Housing Land Trust, went through a presentation. I thought well put together and made some good arguments for what they're doing and kind of updated us on their process, which I thought was informative. And then also attended the same meeting that Julie attended as well about the mobile homes and recommend, it is this Wednesday? I can't remember.
It is, it's this Wednesday, law school courtroom from 6 to 8.
Yeah.
Just can I add something?
Yeah,
Are you done?
absolutely.
Are you done?
Yeah.
The one thing that's really unique about this group is that you have people who are on the city council, you have people from the commissioners, we have a commissioner there, we have the Intermountain Fair Housing Commission. They're taking a very active role in that process. And it's kind of a whole way of looking at, because there's a lot of people who are looking at potential eviction right now.
One more thing I'll say, I just remembered on May, where's my notes? May 15th, they're going to be having at the 1912 Center that council you just submitted. They're going to be talking about some of these issues of affordable housing of Idaho. And so anyone wants to attend that, recommend it.
Now, Haley.
I think all my commissions ended up getting canceled, but I did want to note, Maureen did a great job representing the city at the community safety town hall that the U of I and all its various stakeholders had put together. I'm glad we saw the conversation. I think based on how small the group who attended was, that actually kind of was a message to me that like people are feeling okay in town, which was a weird silver lining that I wasn't expecting. But on that note, we've also got the State of Public Safety luncheon on Wednesday hosted by the Chamber at the Best Western, which would be a good and informative conversation with ISP and I think the Sheriff's Department and MPD as well. And then I missed that particular event for the mobile home park because I attended the 2 community presentations that were interviews with the 2 potential candidates for the Moscow School District new superintendent. And so it went much faster than I expected. Both of them they were here for like 24 hours. I think both of them, one's from Nampa, one was from Nez Perce. Yes, thank you. And so the district, like after the open houses, the community things all happened Monday and Tuesday, the first week of March. And then I think by Thursday they had announced they were hiring. So it's really exciting. I'm excited for him to move to town, and I'm blanking on his name right now. So that's really embarrassing. I'll think of it in a minute. His name is Sean Teagues. So he's our new school district superintendent. So there were a lot of community events that happened, even though my my commission ones didn't happen. And then the other one I wanted to note, this Thursday and Friday, Kurt the painter is a local painter in town, and he is pretty much single-handedly coordinating a trades fair on Thursday and Friday at the Latah County Fairgrounds, which is super cool. If I remember right, I think Thursday is open just to students and families, and then like students in high school. And so he's got painters, welder, like any plumbing folks, electricians. I know Whitcomb will be there because we got Wendy hooked up. But Thursday, I think almost all day at the Latah County Fairgrounds is to give students the chance to meet those people. And then on Friday, it's open to the community. So just a couple of community plugs. And I think that's it. I've got Smart Transit tomorrow, Human Rights Commission tomorrow. And yeah, that's what I got.
Okay.
Back to you.
For me, airport is progressing. The new terminal is still popping up out of the ground, and progress should begin to hasten to the point that you can see it from the road pretty quick here. So it's coming along. The Humane Society had its soup and pie event fundraiser up at the 1912 Center. Met with Stepping Stones and working forward in getting more donations out to worthy folks in the community development area who needed the help. Also, what do we got? Remax had its grand opening downtown, and that was a fun event. A lot of time has been consumed with the Association of Idaho Cities because the legislature, heaven help us, is in session. And all of this is all of the bills that are going on down there in Boise at the moment. Things are wrapping up quickly. The Senate stops hearing any committee work on Tuesday. And so that is usually a harbinger of the termination of the legislative season. Thank goodness. Also, tomorrow I return to the fourth grade. Apparently I need remedial work.
Idaho
but-
history.
Yeah, I
Yes. So going in to talk to the fourth graders about government. And next week, Sandra, Julia, and I are headed off to DC for the National League of Cities and to go up to Capitol Hill and speak with our senators and representatives and try to have them look favorably upon Moscow when it comes to getting out some more grants and also dealing with larger issues that are pertinent to all of the state of Idaho, if not everywhere, things like affordable housing, workforce housing. Also, what are we going to do with all the baby boomers as we age out, and where are we going to stash them? So some issues like that, and see what we can get them talked into doing that's good for a change too. So anything from staff?
Nothing from staff this evening.
Okay. A motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're done. Thank you all for coming, especially journalism students.
Yeah.